Hey, what's up everyone? It's Greg with Elevated Vegan. Today we're going to be making Tofu Tikka Masala. This is one of the more popular Indian food dishes and definitely for good reason. It's absolutely amazing. There's a lot of work that goes into it, a lot of different components, but that said, it's definitely worth the effort. So let's get started. First thing you want to do is toast your cashews, but you want to get rid of small ones so that they don't burn in the oven. Throw them in the oven at 350 for about 10 to 12 minutes. Once they're done, they should be a nice golden brown. Put them in a bowl and set them aside. Next, we want to prepare the garlic for roasting, so cut the tops off of each of the head. Now, there's always going to be some cloves on the side that don't get touched, so you want to make sure to cut the tops off of those as well. The head should look something like this. Go ahead and clean up the sides of all of them, and you should be ready for roasting. I use a mason jar. You could also use a garlic roaster. Pour the olive oil on top and put a piece of foil on it. Put the mason jar ring on there and then poke it with the push pin. Remove the excess foil and you're going to take the lid back off. Then load up the pan and it's going to go in the oven. This will stay in for about 45 minutes at 375. Next, we'll prepare the tofu, so cut it long ways here 3 times. I'm using super firm tofu. If you're not able to find super firm, you can always use extra firm, but you want to press it a little bit because the super firm is basically ready to go. Cut it lengthwise, and then cut in little squares, and then cut those squares into triangles. Next, we prepare the onion. We're just looking for a nice dice. It doesn't have to be too crazy. It is going to get sauteed and then blended, so it doesn't matter too much. So don't stress if it's not a perfect dice. Next, we'll cut the tomatoes. You want to remove the bit where it connected to the stem. Once you're finished with that, go back and cut the tomatoes into a dice. Next, we got to cut the serranos up. So what I like to do is cut the tops off and then quarter them lengthwise, then go back and cut them widthwise. This will give you a dice. Next, we want to prepare the cilantro. I like to use the leaves for this recipe. So pluck the leaves off the stems and then set them aside. Next, we're going to take the cilantro leaves and bunch them up, and then just slice. This is called a chiffonade. It looks really good when you stir it into a sauce, and then it also looks great when you put it on top as a garnish. Next, it's time to prepare the ginger. We want to peel it, so just take your knife and make some thin slices along the edges. Once you have that, we're going to cut it up and get it into a fine mince. Next, we want to prepare the garlic, so break off the cloves and then peel them. Once you've peeled them, we're going to press them. So load up your garlic press and run them through. I like to store the ginger and garlic in a mason jar at this point because then I can throw it on the scale and just add the turmeric. Put this aside, and next we're going to pan fry the tofu. Heat up a pan and throw a little bit of neutral oil on it, and then start loading up the tofu. Once you've loaded up your pan, give it a little bit of a shake. That way you make sure that there's oil under every piece of tofu so that it cooks properly. While the tofu's cooking, we're going to make the garam masala. So take a blade coffee grinder and add in some cinnamon, mace, clove, and cardamom. Add your whole spices, and on the top crumble in some bay leaves. Put the lid on and blend it up into a nice powder. And then set the garam masala aside. At this point, the tofu should be about ready. Should have a nice golden brown color on one side. Takes about 20 minutes to cook on one side, and then about 10 minutes on the other. Just like before, you want to just shake the pan a little bit just to make sure that there's oil under each piece so that they cook. After about 10 minutes, take the tofu off and set it aside. As you can see, I have towels out here for good reason. It's going to make a big mess, so just a heads up. Next, put a stock pot on the stove, add a little bit of neutral oil, heat the oil up, and then we're going to add in cumin seeds. You don't want to leave them in too long because they can burn. You just want to sputter them for about 30 seconds. Next, add the onion and give it a little stir. The onion's going to take about 20 minutes to brown properly, so be patient. Don't stir it too much, but you do want to stir it every so often. At the end of those 20 minutes, it's going to look about like this. Next, throw in the ginger, garlic, and turmeric. You don't want this in here too long either. We just need to cook off a bit of that raw garlic character. That's going to take about 3 minutes. At this point, we're going to be adding in some dry spices so we don't want them to burn. An easy way around this is adding in a little bit of water. Next goes in the chili powder and give it a stir. In goes the cumin powder, coriander powder, give it a stir. And then we're going to add the garam masala that we made earlier. Next, add in the minced serrano and give it a stir. And what we're trying to do here is just cook the spices, but also evaporate off that water. You don't want it to go dry on you at this point, so make sure you manage your heat carefully. Add in some water. It'll help the spices from burning, and it'll help the tomatoes cook more efficiently. Next, add in the cashews from earlier and give it a little stir. In goes some cane sugar. It's going to balance the acid from the tomatoes, and then a little nutritional yeast for that savory factor. Next, add in the dried shredded coconut. Stir it in and then put the lid on top to let it cook. While that's cooking, it's time to get your roasted garlic ready. Get your butter ready. Back to the sauce. Take the lid off and then add in the fenugreek leaves. Next goes in some almond yogurt. Add in your butter, followed by the coconut butter, and give it a stir. Next goes in the roasted garlic cloves from earlier. And then put the lid on and let the aromatics infuse. Next, it's time to blend it up. I'm just using a basic stick blender for this part. It may take a few minutes to blend it up depending on your stick blender, but at the end of it, it should look about like this. Next, get a smaller stock pot ready and put a strainer on it so that you can strain the sauce. Now you can go ahead and load up your strainer with the sauce. Once you've got your strainer loaded up, go ahead and grab a spoon of any kind and then just drag it along the bottom of your strainer. What this is going to do is it's going to allow the liquids to flow through, and then the solids such as pepper seeds and tomato skins are going to stay in your strainer. Keep dragging your spoon until you're left with a fairly dry mixture. Once you've got it to that point, scrape the bottom of the strainer as well. Repeat the process until you've strained all the sauce. Once you're all done, it should look kind of like this, which is kind of an applesauce-like texture. At this point it's fine, but I like to get it a little smoother. Blend it for about a minute or two. Now we can see it's perfectly smooth after blending. Put it back on the stove and just make sure that it comes back up to heat. Once it's back up to heat, add in the tofu from earlier. The tofu is going to be a little bit cool, so make sure you bring this back up to heat as well. The tofu is going to be a little bit cool, so be sure to stir it in, and then we're going to bring this back up to heat as well. Once it's back up to heat, now it's time to finish out the dish. Save a little bit for the end because you'll want to put it on the top for garnish. Stir it in, and it's ready to serve. I mean, it's the only proper way to eat Indian food. Alright, let's give it a shot. Try the sauce here. It's slightly sweet. You got that really nice roasted garlic finish. There's kind of like a toasty kind of maple character there from the fenugreek. Perfect amount of spiciness. Well guys, if you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment below and subscribe. This is my first video and I've got many more to come, so I'll see you in the next one.